Mom, please save me.
My daughter, whom I raised to be a decent person, with the money I earned until my wrists ached, came home one day with a debt of 50 million won. And this happened just a year after I had secretly paid off 40 million, one of it without my husband knowing. Trapped inside an unopened delivery box was not extravagant luxury, but the screams of my child's child struggling to survive. This is the confession of a mother's tears of blood who spent her entire life trimming other people's hair but failed to see her own child's tangled heart. Today, I wanted to ask if your children are truly okay. The painful truth that our children who appear fine on the outside might be swallowing alone behind their doors begins now. Before the story begins, please subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. This is a channel that delivers the hidden stories of ordinary people every day. I have never put down my scissors. I first picked them up at age 29, so this year marks exactly my 31st year. When I cut customers' hair koshpa and a mukabber and apply perm solution, I don't even realize how the day goes by. My day used to consist of standing in the cramped salon until my feet were practically glued to the floor, only to let out a sigh of relief after seeing off the last customer. My salon is located in a small alley in Ansan, Gyeonggi Province. It is a tiny shop with a modest sign and just 3 chairs. Yet I never lost my regular customers. That is because I have been styling their hair in the same spot with the same hands for over 30 years. My regular customers simply call me Ms. Young-suk. I don't dislike hearing that. My husband works at a distribution company. He has been a man of few words since he was young. When he got off work, his entire routine consisted of eating, watching the news, and falling asleep. He often left on weekends claiming he had work, and even during holidays, entertaining clients took precedence over visiting my in-laws. So it is no exaggeration to say that I raised our daughter Mi-young all by myself. From kindergarten and elementary school enrollment to middle school graduation, and even picking her up after evening study sessions throughout high school, fell to me. Do I feel wronged? To be honest, rather than feeling wronged, that was simply my life. While running the beauty salon, I took it for granted that I had to raise my child, prepare meals for my husband, and look after my in-laws. No, I had to believe it was natural to endure. And that was because I had Mi-young. Mi-young is my pride. No, the word pride isn't enough. Mi-young is the product of my 30 years of cutting hair. She graduated from college and got a job at a major corporation. Just thinking of my daughter, who is now working as an assistant manager, gave me strength no matter how much my wrists were strained. There is a regular customer named Mrs. Jung. Her son is a civil servant, and every time we meet, she talks about him so proudly that I can't be outdone. Madam, our Mi-young has taken on a big project this time. Oh my, I heard your daughter Young-suk is truly everything. That single remark kept me standing all day. I can hear other people boasting about their children every day, but the sense of pride I feel when boasting about my own child is incomparable. Mi-young was also a devoted daughter. Knowing that my knees were in bad condition, she took a half-day off work to accompany me to the hospital. She sat with me in the examination room, stayed by my side from the moment I asked the doctor questions directly until I got the prescription and picked up the medicine at the pharmacy That day when Mi-young held my hand and asked, "Mom, it was harder because of me, wasn't it?" I just smiled. I told her it wasn't, that I was fine, and made sure to get red ginseng for my husband during the holidays. She would take extra care to get the prettiest packaging, saying it was the best red ginseng. For Dad, For me, she bought joint supplements and hand cream. I can still vividly picture Mi-young's face as she shyly held them out, saying, "Mom, your hands have gotten so rough." That was the kind of daughter she was. Sometimes she would also come to the hair salon on weekends. She would walk right in without a word, put on an apron, sweep the floor, and arranged the towels, sitting right next to me in a space filled with the smell of perm solution. When I asked, "You need to rest too, come here," she would simply say, "Because I missed you, Mom." On those days, we would close the salon and go out to eat something delicious together. Sitting face to face and eating in silence was the happiest moment in the world. But you know what? When did it start? Delivery boxes began piling up in front of the entrance. At first, it was just one or two. Looking at the boxes in front of Myung's room, I would just laugh it off, thinking she was shopping a lot lately and didn't think much of it. Since I enjoy buying clothes from home shopping channels occasionally myself, I figured young people must be doing it just as much. After all, Myung is a working professional and earns her own money. But the boxes kept increasing. Whenever Myung was home on the weekend, there would be a few boxes of various sizes piled up in the entryway. Watching Myung carry a delivery box into her room and close the door, I would just walk into the kitchen. I thought I should at least set the table for a meal. Her room door was always locked. It wasn't like this when she was young. Even in high school, she was the type of kid who would leave her door wide open while studying. But at some point, she started locking it whenever she went into her room. When I knocked and said, "Myung, come eat," the door would open a moment later and Myung would sit at the table. Her expression always seemed to be looking somewhere far away. Still, I didn't think much of it. I just brushed it off, thinking work must be tough for her. They say all young people are like that these days. There was one day that was the strangest. It was the weekend when Myung came to the hair salon. She was sweeping the floor as usual, but suddenly she just sat there without saying a word. I was serving a customer for perm, and when I glanced out the corner of my eye, Myung was staring blankly out the window. She didn't smile, she didn't say a word, just stared blankly. Only after the customer left and I said, "Myung, let's go eat," did she finally smile. I let that day pass as well as if nothing had happened. Smiling through hardships was our family's way of doing things, because I had lived that way too. Even when my wrist ached terribly at the salon, I would smile in front of our customers. Even when my husband came home late, I would sit at a table without saying a word. I thought that was just the natural way of life. Looking back, I should have sincerely asked Myung just once back then. "Myung, are you okay these days? How is it? Nothing unusual is happening, right?" I don't know why saying that one word was so difficult. I think I was probably afraid of the answer. I didn't know what I could do if I heard she wasn't okay, so I just wanted to believe that everything was going well. Iwarama. Every day I bragged about my daughter to our regular customers and took the supplements Myung bought for me, thinking that was enough. As I cut hair, I was always trimming other people's hair. Yet, back then, I had absolutely no idea how tangled my own daughter's heart was. I only found out that Myung had broken up much later. Myung rarely brought up her boyfriend, Nilok Shanto. If I asked first, she would simply say, "We're doing well," and that was it. If I brought up marriage, she would change the subject, saying, "Mom, I'll introduce him to you later, when I take my time." I just let it be. Since young people these days don't rush into marriage, I was careful not to rush things, fearing that we might drift apart. But one day, Mi-hyung's expression changed. She wasn't the talkative type to begin with, but the time she spent looking at her phone while eating increased dramatically. There were more and more days when she would barely eat and then just head into her room. When I would say, "Myung, eat more," she would reply, "I'm full," but the sight of her bowl, less than half empty, weighed heavily on my mind. Wait. It was around that time that the number of delivery boxes began to increase noticeably, sometimes one a day. Sometimes two, they would arrive on weekdays and weekends alike. They varied in size, from palm-sized ones to large boxes reaching up to my waist. Every time I saw the boxes piling up in front of the entrance, I felt a pang of sadness, but I couldn't really say anything. No, he? After all, Mi-hyung had bought them with her own money. One weekend, Mi-young was watching TV with me in the living room when she fiddled with her phone, then suddenly got up and went into her room. A short while later, she emerged with a delivery slip in her hand. I was about to ask what she had bought, but I just left it alone. But the next day, there were 3 boxes in front of the entrance. That day, for the first time, I spoke up. Inga, why are you buying so much lately? You just pile it up in your room. Before I could even finish, she said, Mom, can I even buy what I want? I'll handle it myself. Mi-young stopped halfway into her room with the boxes and turned back. Her voice was raised. She had never acted like that toward me before, and I was speechless for a moment. What's wrong with me buying my own things with my own money? Why are you always interfering, Mom? The door slammed shut. I stood there for a long time. I sat blankly in the middle of the living room, feeling as if my heart had sunk. It was the first time I had ever heard my daughter say something like that. No, it was the first time I had heard that voice from Mi-kwang. I went into the kitchen and did the dishes. My hands trembled slightly as I washed the dishes. Had I done something wrong? Did I say something for no reason? Those thoughts kept swirling around in my head. That day my husband came home late from work again, ate a late dinner and was watching the news on the sofa. Did he know what had happened that day, eh? I didn't say anything to him either. I knew that even if I did, he would just say, she must be a little tired, and that would be the end of it, and that would be... It was that night. It was past midnight when I came out to the kitchen to get some water, and saw that the light in Mi-hyung's room was on. Light was seeping out from under the door. I thought about knocking, but just turned around. I didn't know what to say. Should I apologize? Should I ask if she was okay? I just went into my room. The strange thing was the next day. When I woke up in the morning, Mi-young was in the kitchen, making breakfast. As I rubbed my eyes and went inside, she even prepared an egg roll, asking, Mom, did you sleep well last night? I made a simple breakfast because I thought you might be tired. She set the table for me. Meeting the daughter who had yelled at me the day before, I momentarily wondered if it was a dream. I just said thank you. Mi-young ate as usual and got ready for work. Watching her back as she left the front door, saying, I'll be back, I didn't know how to think about what happened yesterday. Days like that repeated themselves. Some days she was the sweetest daughter in the world, while other days she was a child who would explode if I touched her. On some weekends, she would come to the hair salon and stay by my side all day, folding towels and wiping the floor, whereas on other weekends, she wouldn't come out of her room all day. I gradually became wary of her. I would figure out what kind of day Mi-young was on before I would speak to her. I would observe her facial expressions and listen to the tone of her voice. I had become wary of my daughter, just like a hairdresser trying to please a customer. It was a strange thing, but back then, I didn't even realize it was strange. I remember an incident that happened at the salon around that time. A regular customer, Mrs. Choi, came in for a perm and said something like this. Young-suk, I hear there are a lot of young people with depression these days. My niece quit her job and just lay in her room for a while. She looked fine on the outside, but she was suffering on the inside. I just laughed it off, saying, the world is just so harsh these days. But that evening, when I returned home and looked at Mi-young's door, Mrs. Choi's words suddenly came to mind. A thought of disbelief crossed my mind. I quickly brushed it off, telling myself that there was no way my Mi-young would do such a thing. Even though she had suffered, it couldn't be a big deal. She had a job and was doing well. However, I couldn't sleep well that night. It was some time later. I needed to clean Mi-young's room, but she was out at work that day. Should I replace the old bedding? Lost in these thoughts, I opened a drawer and found some medicine packets deep inside. I looked at the ingredients listed on the packaging one by one and saw they were sleeping pills. Then my hand stopped at the antidepressant. I stared at it for a long time. Looking at the prescription date, it was several months ago. I carefully put it back into drawer A. Then, pretending to tidy up the bedding, I left the room. They say kids these days are under a lot of stress. But if it was prescribed by the doctor, it must be okay. How did I raise her? My Mi-young will be fine. You're doing well right now. I comforted myself like I let that day slide too. Looking back now, I want to ask myself why I just let it slide. But honestly, I was scared. I didn't know what I would do if I found out what it was. I had the hair salon housework and to take care of my husband's meals. I think I felt that the current balance me do I couldn't be broken. So I pretended not to know. As a mother, I pretended not to notice, even after discovering sleeping pills and antidepressants in my daughter's drawers. That is my biggest regret. I received that call at the hair salon. It was around 2 p.m. I had just finished a customer's perm and was taking a brief breather before the next one arrived. When Mi-young's name popped up on the screen, I thought my daughter was just calling to check in. Mom's voice sounded strange. It was hoarse and muffled. Mi-young, what's wrong? Is something wrong? I could hear Mi-young catching her breath after transferring schools. It was a long time before she finally spoke. I have something to tell you. Please come home early this evening. That evening, Mi-young sat across from me. Her husband hadn't gotten home from work yet. Mi-young handed me a document placed on the dining table where we were sitting opposite each other. It was a debt notice from a credit card company. I looked at the numbers. 40 million won. I couldn't speak. Mom, I ended up like this because I was juggling credit cards. The interest has grown so much that I can't handle it anymore. Mi-young lowered her head. Her shoulders trembled. I stared at those numbers for a while. 40 million won. I barely make 2.5 or 3 million won a month at the hair salon. And even though I could calculate in my head how many years it would take to save that money, I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop. When did it start? It's been 2 years. At first it was just a little bit, but at some point it started snowballing. The word destiny struck me deeply. While I was bragging about my daughter to my regular customers for those New Year's, Mi-young had been carrying this burden all alone. Why didn't you tell me? Wouldn't it be hard for Mom if I told you? At those words, I couldn't do anything. Mi-young cried. At first she cried quietly, but later her shoulders heaving as she sobbed. Watching my 30-year-old daughter cry like a little child in front of her mother, I reached out and took Mi-young's hand. Please help me just this once, Mom. If this is resolved, I won't do this again. Those words pierced my heart. That night after my husband fell asleep, I sat alone and looked through my bank book. There were 2 accounts in my name. One was for running the hair salon and the other was an emergency fund account I had been saving little by little for a long time. It was money I had secretly saved, not so much for my husband, but to prepare for when something unexpected happened and to buy dowry for my daughter's wedding. I received the balance. I, who had never once asked anyone for a favor in my life, and had worked so hard to save money without ever borrowing it, suddenly faced with the task of spending a larger sum. That was the first time my hands trembled. I didn't tell my husband. I couldn't bring myself to tell him. I decided to just shoulder the burden, alone, regardless of what would happen, to him or our family if he found out. Since I had received a promise from Young that it would be just this once, I thought I only needed to cover it up this one time. If anything changed after I paid off the debt, it was that I no longer had days off. Originally, my only day off was Monday, but I eliminated even that. I had to pay for living expenses, save a little bit each month, and pay a fixed amount every month. After deducting rent and material costs from the salon's income, it was a tight budget. So I started opening the shop on Mondays. There were regular customers who said they wanted to come on Mondays. I diligently served them and gradually filled the spot. My husband didn't ask why I was suddenly going out on Mondays. At the time, I just assumed that indifference was his personality. He was someone who had never cared about housekeeping. He was the kind of person who would come home from work, eat, watch the news, and go to sleep. He wasn't the type to care about what time I left, or came back, or how many patches were on my wrist, or on my wrist. So I didn't say anything either. My hands gradually became rougher. My hands were already in poor condition from handling so many perming chemicals, but they changed dramatically after my days off disappeared. That was the first time I understood what it meant for fingerprints to fade, When I touched my fingertips, the curves that used to be there felt faint. In the winter, they would crack and bleed. Applying hand cream was no use. There was an expensive hand cream in the drawer that Myung had bought for my birthday. I chuckled as I applied it. I wondered what use putting cream on these hands, but since Myung had bought it for me, I applied it sparingly. I didn't show any signs of it in front of customers. When customers arrived, I still boasted about my daughter. My Myung got praised for a team project this time, I said. Kids these days are all so busy, but she still makes sure to come over on weekends. I cut hair while smiling. My insides were burning, but the scissors didn't stop. Because that was my life. If there was one thing that changed, it was the way I looked at Myung had changed. In the past, she was simply my pretty, kind, and talented daughter, but now I found myself looking at her with anxious eyes. When I saw Myung looking at her phone while eating, I wondered if she was buying something again. My heart sank whenever a delivery box arrived. But I couldn't say anything, because I remembered having exploded once before. What if I provoked her again and she got hurt? I thought I shouldn't add more burdens to a child who was already struggling. So I just watched her and bottled it up inside. I decided not to bring up the topic of money with Myung again. I helped her just this once, so now she would handle it on her own. I endured with that single belief as I held the scissors, trimmed customers' hair, and smiled. I still didn't realize how futile that belief was. It was last spring when my husband started staying home. He had retired from the distribution company where he had worked for over 30 years. On his last day of work, my husband didn't say much. Coming home in the evening, he simply said, "It's all over," and sat on the sofa, as usual, to turn on the news. When I asked him if he wanted to do something to celebrate his retirement, he said he just wanted to rest. However, as days, weeks, and months passed, I began to feel a bit strange. My husband was at home. He was sitting at the dining table when I was getting ready to leave for the hair salon in the morning, and he was in the living room when I came home in the evening. Honestly, it was uncomfortable at first to have someone who had gone out in the morning and come home at night for over 30 years suddenly staying home all day. It was that a feeling of someone having entered my personal space. I think my husband felt just as awkward. For the first month, we just watched TV. We would watch the morning news, the evening news, and sometimes fall asleep while watching documentaries in between. When I told him the food was the refrigerator as I was leaving the salon, all he did was answer okay. Then one day, my husband started to move around a little. When I was getting ready to go grocery shopping, he would say, "I'm going with you, and follow me out." And at first, he just walked along. But later, he started pushing the shopping cart and carrying heavy bags for me. It felt strange to see him doing that silently, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. In our 30 years of marriage, I can count on one hand the times my husband has gone grocery shopping with me. He was always busy. Even on weekends, it was either a client appointment or he was lying down because he was tired. Seeing him push a shopping cart like that for some reason made me feel like I was about to cry. It felt like a mix of joy, unfamiliarity, and sorrow. One day, I was getting ready to leave to clean the salon for an early morning appointment when my husband, looking, asked, "Why are you leaving so early?" I replied, "I'm just like this." He stared at me blankly for a moment, then lay back down. His gaze was a bit strange. It looked like he was deep in thought. The next day, and the day after that, whenever I left early, he would get up and watch me. He didn't say a word. He just watched. It was one evening. I was putting a patch on my wrist when my husband came and sat down next to me. Then he said, "I'll put it on for you." I said I was fine, but he just took the patch and put it on my wrist. His silent touch felt awkward, but I didn't dislike the awkwardness. One evening while eating dinner, my husband asked, "Don't you have any days off? Didn't you usually have Mondays off?" I replied, "I'm open on Mondays too." "Why?" I paused for a moment, and many of our regular customers say they want to come on Mondays. It wasn't a lie, I just hadn't told him everything. My husband thought, "You still need to rest," and didn't ask any further. I didn't say anything more either. Around that time, Mi-young was still busy. She worked overtime during the week and spent many weekends resting in her room. Since my husband was home, she spent a little less time in the living room than before. We started having meals together as a family more often. My husband wasn't the type to talk much to Mi-young, but he would at least ask her if she was eating well at the dinner table and how work was going these days. Mace. Mi-young simply replied, "Yeah, I'm fine." Watching that, I had many thoughts. There were good things about my husband retiring and staying home. The feeling of not being alone when leaving in the morning, and the house with the lights on when coming home in the evening. These things were small, but they were different. But on the other hand, something kept bothering me. I could sense that my husband was starting to worry about this and that while he was at home. Watching him finally realize how early I left and how late I came back, how often I had a patch on my wrist, and what it was like to have no days off, I didn't understand. I wondered if I was grateful that he was at least showing interest despite the unfamiliarity of his interference, or if I was hurt that he was only pretending to care now. I also honestly means, lad, what difference does it make if he learns things now that he didn't know for 30 years? I still don't know what to call that feeling. Healing? I still couldn't say a word to Mi-young. The delivery boxes kept arriving. It seemed like they were coming less frequently than before, but then again, maybe not. I didn't know if I had become too sensitive, or if they really hadn't decreased. Mi-young continued to keep her door closed. Some days she looked fine, and other days her eyes seemed to be gazing somewhere far away. I just prepared meals. Every morning, I would prepare food for 3 people, go to the hair salon, come home in the evening, and prepare meals again. That was my day. As those days piled up, I pretended not to notice even though I felt something growing inside me, young, Wang. Then, one spring day, it finally burst. It was a Saturday. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner and Mi-young was in her room. It was an ordinary Saturday afternoon. An ordinary weekend filled with the sounds of simmering pot and the TV. But there was no sound of my husband coming in. My husband had said he was just going to the supermarket. But when no one heard the front door, even after a long time, I peeked my head in. He was standing at the entrance. He was just standing there, holding a piece of mail, without moving. Honey, what is wrong? My husband slowly lifted his head. I don't think I will ever forget that look in his eyes. He held the mail he was holding out to me. I reached out and took it. Mi-young's name was written on the envelope and the sender was a credit card company. It had already been opened. I unfolded the paper. It was a mess. The settlement amount. The numbers caught my eye. 50 million won. My mind went blank. It was separate from the 40 million won I paid off a year ago. Completely different cards, completely different accounts. It was debt Mi-young had incurred again in the meantime. I felt the strength drain from my legs. I leaned my back against the kitchen wall. My husband's voice was low. What is this? I couldn't speak. I just stood there holding the paper. It's Mi-young's debt. Did you know about the 50 million won? At that question, I closed my eyes. I had to speak. It was already a moment of no return. I slowly opened my mouth. It happened once a year ago. 40 million won. My husband's face hardened. Well, Mi-young said she had card debt, so I paid it off. I couldn't tell you. Silence fell. My husband walked to Mi-young's room. He knocked on the door. Once, twice. There was no answer. My husband's hand reached for the doorknob, but it was locked. Then my husband raised his voice. Choi Mi-young. I opened the door and heard a sound from inside. A moment later, the door opened. I looked at Mi-young's face. Her expression was stiff, as if she had sensed something. My husband thrust an overdue payment notice in front of her. What is this? The moment Mi-young saw the paper, her face turned pale. She didn't say a word. 50 million won. This is my debt? Dad, tell me. Mi-young's lips trembled. Just then the room came into view. My husband threw the door wide open. And then everything poured out. The delivery boxes piled behind the door tumbled down. Large and small boxes spilled out into the living room. Unopened boxes. The room was filled with designer bags, cosmetics, sets, and clothes that had been opened but never used. I felt suffocated watching that sight. I had believed the debt had decreased since the day he paid off 40 million won. No, I wanted to believe it had decreased, but it hadn't. The room was much more packed than I had imagined. My husband's voice trembled. What is all this? I asked, what is all this? Mi-young slumped to the ground right there. She sat on the floor, her knees buckling, and covered her face with her hands. I'm sorry. I tried to stop, but I couldn't. It felt like I'd be okay for a moment after an accident. So I had another accident, and another. Interest begat interest, and eventually, even I couldn't handle it. Her voice choked with emotion, cutting off her words. I stood there, looking down at Mi-young. I was angry. I'll be honest. I was furious. You promised you wouldn't do this again when you paid back the 40 million won a year ago. I remembered those tears. I remembered that promise. It was money I saved. Money. I worked so hard to save for my daughter's wedding dowry. Where had it all gone? But at the same time, Mi-young sitting on the floor looked so small. She is 31 now, yet she looked so tiny. My husband exploded. Choi Mi-young, do you think this is a joke? You said Mom paid back 40 million with money she shed blood to earn. But in the meantime, she made another 50 million. That makes a total of 90 million. Whose name is 90 million, man? Do you even know what that money is? Mi-young's shoulders shrank even further. Dad, do you know? I know too. If you know, why are you acting like this? Why knowing all this? At that moment, I couldn't say a word to either my husband or Mi-young. My husband turned to look at me. Why didn't you tell me before this happened? Why didn't you say a word to me while you paid back 40 million all by yourself? Those words either struck a chord deep within me. I looked at my husband and... Do you think anything would have changed if I had said it? What do you mean? Did you even give me a chance to speak? Just stay home, Matsi. You leave in the morning and come back late at night. And on weekends you lie around saying you're tired. No matter what I say, you just end it with a single, huh, okay. What can I say to someone like you? My husband was left speechless. It wasn't just once or twice that I felt Mi-young was struggling, yet I kept it all to myself. Even when delivery boxes piled up, I thought things would get better soon. I even swallowed the strange medicine I found in the room by myself. Because I didn't think telling you would solve anything. No, even if I knew you would just explode like this, because you simply had no interest in the house. Medicine? What kind of medicine is Mi-young taking? It's been 30 years. For 30 years, I've done everything alone in this house. Raising the kids, doing the housework, running the hair salon, Halan. You might think you did everything as the head of the household, just because you went out to earn money, but I earned money, took care of the house, and raised the kids. Boom, boom. And yet, I couldn't say even once that it was hard. It was hard because there was no one to talk to. My voice trembled. I tried not to cry, but the tears came out first. If you come now and ask me why I didn't tell you, what am I supposed to say? My husband said nothing. Mi-young was also sitting on the floor, crying. The three of us were in the same space, yet we were all completely broken. Not a single person was standing. Eventually, I went into the kitchen. The stew was burning. As I put out the fire, I just cried right there. Just as we had done silently for 30 years. No one ate dinner that evening. Everyone went into their respective rooms and closed the doors. That unique atmosphere of the household felt so heavy that day. I couldn't sleep all night. I stared at the ceiling and thought, 40 million plus 50 million, totaling 90 million won. That number kept flashing before my eyes. But there was something that kept coming to mind even more than the number. The image of me sitting on the floor, covering her face with her hands. That voice saying, I tried to stop, but I couldn't. That kept lingering in my ears. I couldn't sleep a wink that night. I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, then went out to the kitchen and drank a glass of water. The light in Mi-young's room was off. There was no sound from my husband's room either. That unique atmosphere felt heavier than yesterday. I sat on a kitchen chair for a long time. I picked up my phone, and sent text messages to the regular customers with appointments at the hair salon. I am sorry. Due to unforeseen circumstances, we have had to close today. I apologize for the inconvenience. For 30 years, I kept the shop open, even on days when my wrists ached as if they would break or my knees were swollen. I never even took a day off the day after a holiday. For someone like me to close on a Sunday felt so strange that my fingers trembled. But today I had to close. I had to be home today. Why? Young Kemp came out first. After 8 a.m. she thronged into the kitchen with a disheveled face, but stopped when she saw me. Mom, Anna closed today. Young looked at me for a moment. Without a word, Amita, she opened and closed the refrigerator. Then she pulled up a chair at the dining table and sat down. I didn't say anything either. A short while later, my husband came out. He seemed to have woken up earlier than usual. He came out without even washing his hair, looked at me and me, and just sat at the table. The three of us sat there in silence. I got up and set the table. Since no one ate dinner last night, my hands just moved. I took side dishes out of the refrigerator, served rice, heated up the soup, and set the table for the new guests. No one picked up a spoon. My husband spoke first. Myung looked up. Mom mentioned medicine yesterday. What kind of medicine are you taking? Myung put down her spoon. She bit her lip for a moment. Sleeping pills and antidepressants. My husband's face hardened. About 2 years. At that short remark, Myung's eyes changed. I felt something. I held my breath. Why? Myung's voice trembled. Dad really doesn't know? Or is he pretending not to know? Myung, do you know how hard it was for me at work? Getting pushed around by the team leader, working overtime, working on weekends. While all that, I broke up with the man we were even talking about marriage with. Dali. Do you know what he said to me? That I was too sensitive and that being with him was exhausting. Tears. When I came home after hearing that, I really couldn't tell anyone, Bun. I felt like if I told Mom, she would worry. But when I spoke to Dad, I was cut off. Myung looked straight at her husband. I didn't think Dad would listen, even if I told him. That's just the kind of person he is. Dad wasn't there when I entered middle school or when I bombed the college entrance exam in high school. He was always at work, on business trips, at clients. I have hardly any memories of Dad being in my life. Her husband said nothing. Mom was all alone. Whenever I was having a hard time, I knew she was struggling just by looking at her face, saying it was the hair salon or the house. But I didn't want to add another burden to that, so I just endured it alone. Myung's voice choked up as she tried to hold on. At first, I just couldn't sleep. When I closed my eyes, the thought of having to go to work tomorrow, the thought of having to endure it again, and thinking about my ex-boyfriend, I wanted to die dozens of times a day. Am I a failure? Am I too sensitive? What did I do wrong? Still, I endured and endured. Then one day I went to the hospital and got a prescription for sleeping pills. At first she only took that, but later they said she needed counseling and medication as well. Hotechi is good as well. My hands trembled as I listened to those words. When I discovered the medicine packet in Myung's room drawer, I simply thought kids these days are under a lot of stress and covered it up. Only then did I realize how irresponsible that indifference had been. I asked about the shopping. My voice cracked. Myung looked at me. At first, I just bought one. I was so exhausted coming home on the subway after work. So I just clicked on my phone while jikin. Then, the package arrived the next day, and for that moment, I felt a sense of anticipation. The package is coming tomorrow. I have to open this tomorrow. If it weren't for that, I think there were days when I really wouldn't have wanted to get up. Hearing those words, tears streamed down my face. When the delivery boxes were piled up like mountains, I thought they were just my daughter's extravagance. But that wasn't the case. Each and every one of those boxes was something Myung had clung to survive the next day. I hadn't known that. I didn't know. Even though I live under the same roof as you, Mom. My husband quietly opened his mouth. Myung looked at him as he said Dad wasn't there. His voice trembled. Right, he wasn't there. Dad didn't know, or maybe he wanted to pretend he didn't. Tears flowed from Myung's eyes. While I was working, I thought it was all for our sake. I thought all I had to do was earn a lot of money. I lived believing that was the job of a head of the household. But my husband stopped speaking. So that wasn't it. The corners of his eyes reddened. Watching him, I held my breath. It felt like the first time I had seen my husband cry since we got married. Myung, Dad is sorry. Myung bit her lip tightly. Ladly. I should have been by your side when you messed up elementary. I should have listened when you said you were having a hard time. I should have known how much you were hurting when you broke up with that man. But I didn't know. I really didn't know. My husband's voice completely broke down. I'm sorry. Your father was so clueless. The moment Young heard those words, everything she had been holding back burst out all at once. She cried out loud. Like a child when I was little. I couldn't hold back any longer and cried too. The three of us sat at the table and cried. The food was getting cold. No one picked up a spoon. Yet, strangely, that place felt like our family was at the same temperature for the first time. After crying for a long time, my husband spoke quietly. Myung, you need to get treatment for this. Myung wiped her tears and nodded. Okay, Dad will go with you. Mom will go too. Don't try to endure this alone. Myung cried again. This time the tears just flowed silently. Right there and then I thought for the first time, are we finally becoming a complete family again? We've lived together for over 30 years, and only now I felt it was too late. At the same time, I also thought it was okay even if it was now. Those two thoughts occupied my mind simultaneously. It was my husband who made the hospital appointment. The day after the three of us cried at the table, my husband quietly picked up his phone and searched online. I saw that scene while doing the dishes in the kitchen. Someone who had never once made a hospital appointment on their own in their life was frantically searching for something. It's the Department of Mental Health, right? They asked me. I washed my hands and replied, probably. My husband called. At first, his tone was a bit awkward. His voice was cautious as he asked, can my family come along? After hanging up, he told me I made an appointment for this Thursday. I just nodded. But honestly, I was scared. I had never been to a psychiatric clinic before. My generation thought going to such a place was something to be ashamed of. A place for the weak-minded, a place for the mentally ill. Those prejudices were firmly ingrained in mind. I couldn't tell Myung about it. Myung spoke first. Mom, isn't it something to be ashamed of? I've been going there for 2 years and it's just a regular hospital. It's just like any other hospital. Those words brought me a little comfort. It was Thursday morning. Mi-young had taken a half day off from work. My husband was someone with nowhere to go, and I had cleared my morning shift at the hair salon. The three of us got into the car together. We sat side by side, but no one spoke. Strangely, however, that silence didn't feel awkward. The hospital was more ordinary than I had expected. A few people were sitting in the neat waiting room. They were all just ordinary people. Some were reading books, others were looking at their phones. It was different from what I had imagined. Mi-young's name was called. The three of us went in together. The doctor was a young man, Anne. He was calm and spoke slowly. Looking at Young's chart, he asked her various questions. When it started, under what circumstances she began shopping, how her sleep was, and how she was feeling right now. Mi-young answered. I listened from the side. These were things I had heard from Mi-young before coming to the hospital, but hearing them again in front of the doctor felt different. They sounded clearer. Stories of the breakup, stories of work, and sleepless nights. Mi-young spoke calmly, but tears kept welling up in my eyes. The doctor looked at my husband and me. Did you happen to know about these symptoms, Mom and Dad? My husband answered first. I didn't know. There was a lot of meaning in that answer. The doctor spoke slowly. Shopping addiction isn't caused by a weak will. When anxiety reaches an extreme level, you repeat behaviors that lower that anxiety, even if only for a moment. The brain learns that pattern. Simply put, it's similar to a cold. No one gets it because they want to. My husband lowered his head as he listened. Then can it be treated? It takes time, but it is possible. The important thing is not to do it alone. Having family by your side is the greatest strength in the treatment. As I heard those words, I clenched my fists tightly. The thought that Mi-young had been alone all this time washed over me again. As we left after the appointment, my husband placed his hand on Mi-young's shoulder. He didn't say a word. He just placed his hand. Mi-young froze for a moment, then simply walked away. Watching her retreating figure, I felt a lump in my throat. We ate dinner at a small restaurant near the hospital. It was a simple meal of soft tofu stew and kimchi stew, but it felt like we were eating together as a family for the first time in a long while. It really felt like we were eating together. While we were eating, my husband spoke. Mi-young. Yes. You pay off the debt. Mi-young stopped picking up her spoon. Mom and Dad aren't paying it off for you this time. But that doesn't mean you have to pay it off alone. Mom and Dad will be by your side. Let's make a plan to get that on how much we can pay each month. And if it gets too hard to hold on, then tell us, But you have to get rid of your credit cards and stop shopping. That's the beginning. Mi-young nodded mid. Okay, it hurts. Don't run away. Mom and Dad will be by your side this time. At those words, Mi-young bit her lip for a moment and then said, okay. I won't run away. What? I didn't say a word while listening to that conversation. My husband spoke before I could. The words I had been trying to say, but couldn't bring myself to say. I felt a sense of unfamiliarity, wondering if this person was capable of saying such things. On the way home, Mi-young sat next to me in the car. After driving for quite a while, Mi-young spoke quietly. Mom, yes, I won't hide anymore. Instead of answering, I took Mi-young's hand. Trees lined the street outside the window. Mi-young's hand was cold. I wrapped it tightly with both hands. 50 million won remained. There was still a mountain of debt to repay. I knew it wouldn't be easy. The treatment would take a long time. The debt would take a long time to pay. And it would take a long time for our family to get used to each other. Valabrias to each other. But strangely, that day didn't scare me. Because there was someone by my side. Because I wasn't alone anymore. Change began with small things. It was the Monday of the week following our hospital visit. As usual, I woke up at dawn and got ready to leave for the hair salon. I heard a noise coming from the kitchen. I looked in and saw my husband standing there. Holding a pot, looking unsure where to put it, he asked, "What are you doing?" I spaced out for a moment as I was about to make soybean paste stew. "You? Do you think I can't draw you?" Even as he asked if I couldn't draw you, my husband's hand was moving awkwardly. He was hesitating because he didn't know how much soybean paste to dissolve. I felt like laughing. I felt like I shouldn't, but it just came out. "Honey." "Yeah. Should I take a day off today?" My husband looked up. "You need to rest sometimes. From now on, take Mondays off." I stared at my husband for a long time. At his words, I decided to close the hair salon on Mondays again. I just stayed home that day. I did nothing. I sat on the sofa and looked out the window. I realized for the first time how awkward it felt to do nothing. My body kept trying to do something. I was about to get up to clean, but I just sat back down. I realized how unfamiliar resting had become to me. The soybean paste stew my husband made was a little salty. Still, it was delicious. Since then, my husband changed little by little. In the mornings, when I left the hair salon, he would go grocery shopping. At first, he didn't know what to buy, so he would text me, "Did we have dumplings at home? Shall we grill fish today?" Texts like that came in. I replied to them while I was doing a customer's hair at the salon. Those messages didn't bother me. On the contrary, they strangely warmed my heart. One weekend, he came to the salon. He opened the door and walked in asking, "Is there anything I can help you with?" He just stood there. While there were no customers, I folded towels and swept the floor. I just stayed by his side without saying a word. A regular customer arrived and was surprised to see my husband. "Oh my, is that your husband, young Suk? Did you come to help?" My husband didn't know what to say, so he smiled awkwardly. "Yes." The customer said, "You must be happy, young Suk." I just smiled and called. It felt good. Honestly, Mi-young was changing little by little too. I canceled all my credit cards. I deleted my shopping account as well. At first, she said it was hard. She said her hand kept reaching for her phone on the subway ride home from work. She said she felt like she had to buy something. On days like that, Mi-young would call me. "Mom, I'm having a hard time right now." I stepped out of the salon for a moment to answer the call. "Okay, tell me." There were times when there wasn't much to say. She would just say she was having a hard time or that something like this had happened at work that day. I just listened. I didn't say it's okay or it's no big deal, like I used to. I just listened. Just listening was enough. One weekend, the new family member decided to organize Mi-young's room. Mi-young spoke first. She said she wanted to get rid of the things in the room. Things that hadn't even been opened. Things that had never been used. My husband carried the boxes, and I sorted the items. We decided to list the things we could sell on secondhand marketplaces and throw away the things that were hard to sell. It took all day. Once all the boxes were gone from the room, space opened up. Mi-young stood in the middle of the room and looked at the empty space. She stared at it for a long time. "It's spacious." I went in to look too. It had always been this spacious, but I hadn't noticed it before. Mi-young said quietly, "Mom, I didn't know my room was this big." Yeah, I guess I didn't see it because I was busy filling it up. Those words lingered in my mind for a long time. I didn't see it because I was busy filling it up. The things Mi-young had tried to fill it with through shopping. That empty space wasn't actually something that could be filled with material things. It was things like a warm word from someone, the feeling of being there, and someone who listens when you say you're having a hard time. I filled it with boxes because I didn't realize that. That evening, I closed the hair salon early. At 3, we walked in the neighborhood park. We didn't have any particular plan. We just came out because we decided to walk. My husband walked ahead, but kept looking back, checking to see me and Mi-young. It was both funny and heartwarming. Mi-young linked her arm with mine. "Mom." "Yes, I think I'll be okay now." I didn't answer immediately. I didn't want to say so easily that I would be okay. I knew there was still that I had to continue treatment, I had to go to work. And there were many more difficult days ahead. But you see, Mi-young's voice as she said she felt okay was different from before Costa-for. It wasn't the voice that used to smile pretending to be okay. It was just a voice that was alive. I held Mi-young's hand tightly. "Yes, you will be okay." The 3 of us sat side by side on a park bench. My husband had bought coffee from the convenience store. It was just ordinary coffee, but as the 3 of us sat side by side drinking it, my throat felt strangely dry. I wondered if there had ever been a day like this. Had we ever lived together and just sat together for a cup of coffee like this? No, there hadn't. There was always something else. My husband was busy, I was exhausted, and Mi-young was alone. Each of us endured in our own place. But that wasn't it. Family isn't about enduring. Being able to sit side by side like this, drinking simple coffee, and saying that today was tough, that is what family is. I learned that by paying a tuition fee of 90 million won. It was an expensive lesson. It isn't perfect. It is still lacking, and it still feels unstable. But that is okay. It was okay not to be perfect. I think about the young people living in this era these days. People who, like Mi-young, look fine on the outside, but are suffering inside, but people who get crushed at work, get hurt in relationships, can't even dream of marriage, and endure it all alone. All alone. People trying to fill that void with something else. It's not that they are weak-hearted. It's not that their minds are sick. They simply need a brief rest. Also want to speak to the parents living in the same era as me. Perhaps what is scarier than money is the indifference of parents who, despite living under the same roof, failed to realize that their child's heart was growing empty, Parents thought their duties were fulfilled simply because their child had a respectable job and was taking care of themselves. Unaware that their insides were empty, they believed everything was fine because they looked fine on the outside. I was like that too. But it wasn't. What a child needs is the trust that it is open up about their inner feelings. It is not the whip to run blindly, but a hand that pauses for a moment to comfort them, saying, "You must have had a hard time." Words of praise are nice, but instead of the harsh words, "I'm saying this for your own good," how about simply holding the hand and saying, "You worked hard to hold on today. It is okay if it is late." Please ask them, even now, "How are things these days? Is everything all right?" That single word brings more to life than you might think. As I cut with scissors, I have always trimmed the hair of others. Now, I feel I can also trim my daughter's heart. Slowly, though clumsily, I will do it together. That is enough. I hope the story I shared today has resonated slightly in a corner of your hearts. I sincerely pray that it will settle peacefully in your later years.